This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Maximus. On this edition of FedGov Today, the new PAE strategy at the Pentagon isn't new for the Space Force.
We've largely been operating in this construct for several years now, almost 5. And we've been applying a lot of the lessons that folks are talking about to increase industrial base capacity and to get faster and more innovative and efficient with our acquisition strategies.
Colonel James Horne, U.S. Space Force, on FedGov Today in just a moment. Uniting program strategy, advanced technology, process, and execution for a more efficient government. That's Maximus. Every program, every service, every time. That's innovation forward. Learn more at maximus.com/federal. Business is booming at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. The base oversaw 71 space launch and missile tests last year. That's more than any time since the 1970s. Colonel James T. Horne III, U.S. Space Force's commander of Space Launch Delta 30 and the Western Launch and Test Range at Vandenberg Space Force Base. Sir, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. What is driving the cadence, the huge uptick in cadence at your installation? Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you, Francis, and thanks so much for having us. It's a very exciting time to be in our business, and we're just privileged to be a part of what I call the second space race. I think what you're seeing is the fruits of years of investment that we've done in our industrial base, and leveraging the innovation and the technological prowess of our country and our economy. As we have invested in the industrial base from a national security perspective, I think that has enabled a business case to reduce the cost of launch. And as space access has decreased in cost, you're starting to see a commercial market evolve, and that's rooted. That's a foundation of the Space Force strategy to leverage commercial innovation in industry to the maximum extent we can, and buy only what we must for those very niche, boutique capabilities that only we can provide, that there is no commercial market for. So you're seeing this rise of what some call a dual use ability to leverage commercial innovation for national security. And so that's driving a huge demand here on our resources, a much larger capacity demand than we have ever seen from the commercial environment. A busy year here at Vandenberg was 9 launches. I remember Captain Horne worried about how we were going to launch 9 times a year. And now we're breaking records that we haven't seen since the 1970s. So truly exciting time to be in the launch business.
How has that change in demand changed the way that you interact with the industrial base, with the commercial suppliers that you work with?
That's a great question, Francis. It's a much more collaborative working environment today. We rely on commercial services now for launch. There was a time in our past where literally the contract said that we buy the rocket and inch off the pad. Now we're paying for a service to deliver that capability to orbit. And we're certainly there, in particular for our no-fail missions, to make sure that we're looking through all the technical aspects of the operation to ensure mission success. But you're seeing an emergence of what we would call delivery in orbit, where a commercial entity contracts with a launch service provider and they launch to space, and then we buy that capability on orbit. But from a capacity perspective, it's really challenging the way we think. You could almost, in some ways, ironically, we've been doing launch for a very long time here at Vandenberg, but we're almost like a startup learning how to scale. There are assumptions that you can make when you only launch 5 to 9 times a year that do not apply when you're launching over 70 launches or even upwards of 100 in the next couple of years. So we're learning those lessons and applying them to everything we do to get faster and more efficient.
What are some of those lessons, and how are you applying them to things like your new strategic plan, which we'll talk about in a moment? Spaceport of the future is one concept of that, Spaceport 2036, and so on. How are you applying what you're learning with that increased cadence, with the increased volume, to these things and pushing that forward, sir?
Yeah, sure. There are 5 focus areas within Spaceport of the Future. across the broad set of things that a spaceport needs to provide. We're starting to think about spaceports like airports or seaports, highly commercialized services where the government still has a vested interest in the success of the operation, and the military and commercial are working together across the entire breadth and width of services that a spaceport provides. But within those 5 areas, we look at things like operations. How can we get leaner in our processes? What are the things that we used to do because we had the luxury to do that we can no longer afford to do? And that really don't apply to the situation we're in now. We look at policy mechanisms that need updating and change. We used to be upwards of 80 to 90% of our capacity from a national security perspective, and that's flipped on its head. Our policy and law is still written for the time when the military was the lion's share of launch. And so we're working together with policymakers across, both within the department and on Capitol Hill to relook at those assumptions and the policies and law behind them and how we can change those to continue to get after more capacity, more efficiency, to rebalance the investment trade space between commercial and military to increase capacity. We also look at things like defending the infrastructure. As world dynamics change, assumptions about the security of our infrastructure have changed with it. And so now we're very much more concerned about protecting and hardening our assets from attack. Our adversaries know that access to space is critical to space capability, and we have to protect that. Another major piece of this is overhauling our infrastructure. We're still riding on a 1960s, the first space race architecture in terms of roads and bridges, commodities, gates, some of the more boring stuff, you might say. So we're investing, over $600 million over the next 5 years in overhauling all of that to be able to handle the increased capacity that we're seeing. A large share of that goes into things like harbors. Most of our customers now ship their rockets or rocket components here for launch, and so we're overhauling the harbor to make it higher capacity for the operations that we see. So those are just a few examples of how we're trying to get faster and more efficient and continue to keep pace with the capacity demand that we see coming.
In your new strategic plan, there are 3 pillars I read: mission, people, and the future. And you said recently about the mission piece, we must expand our capacity for full spectrum operations. What's full spectrum operations from your perspective? What all does that encompass, sir?
Yeah, so Vandenberg is not just a launch base. We have over 54 strategic partners operating on the base. We're the only Space Force base to host elements from all 3 field commands, so MAGCOM equivalents using Air Force lexicon, here on base. We have combat squadrons from Combat Forces Command operating 24/7 with an operational mission on orbit. We have the component command to United States Space Command. It's called Space Forces Base. So they're executing command and control for all space assets globally and on orbit. We have several Space Force deltas, mission deltas. I'm a combined mission and installation delta here as a space launch delta because it takes the whole base to launch a rocket. But we're providing critical base operating support to those combat missions on a daily basis. We also host Space Training and Readiness Command. So Delta 1 trains all of our enlisted guardians here after they graduate from basic military training, in addition to the nuclear airmen that have been trained here for decades. So just a whole lot going on. We host a 24/7 missile defense mission here from the 100th Army Battalion Brigade that's defending the homeland from nuclear attack. Our airfield was just declared a alert base within NORAD Northcom, and so our airfield's going to get much busier. So when we talk about full spectrum operations, we're talking about the full breadth of all of those different mission sets that are relying on us either for base operating support or our operational mission, which is to get assets to orbit. And we focus on those 3 key areas, like you mentioned, Francis: mission, people, and our vision for the future to get there. From a mission perspective, it's all about those Spaceport of the Future lines of effort that we're getting after to increase capacity increase the resiliency of our infrastructure and its defense, and then just to get more efficient with everything we do. For our people, it's developing our workforce so that they're ready for the surge and have the skills that they need to execute the mission, and then improving our quality of life. There are challenges at any base. Here we deal with cost of living, access to housing, access to medical care. Our tagline is "Welcome to Space Country" because we are out in the country, but have a critical space mission that drives a lot of challenges from a quality of life perspective that we're working with all of our partners across the communities and the federal government to get after. And then our vision for the future. So Spaceport 2036, that's our 10-year look at where we're headed. We're likely to see our launch rate doubling or tripling in the next 5 years, in addition to our workforce increasing by 100%. So we typically see 10 to 11,000 people enter the gate on a daily basis. We're looking at upwards of 20,000 folks entering the base to do mission activity here in the next 5 years. So a lot of growth and a lot of efforts to get after increasing our capacity across the full spectrum of things that we're responsible for.
I read that as part of the Spaceport 2036 vision, automation is an important piece of that. What are the opportunities that you see for automation, and maybe not just there, but all across your scope of operations?
Yeah, we talk a lot about artificial intelligence and machine learning. That's not a tag word here. We're actually implementing tools that truly do leverage those capabilities to get more efficient with everything we do. We have integrated data platforms now that look across all of the information that's processed on the spaceport and integrate that into a single integrated picture for the things we're doing and executing. We've got a lot of efficiency gains in things that we're now moving out of what I call wetware, the brain space, and into software. And so we're allowing computers to do the analytics and then give us the things to focus on and look at to increase our efficiency. We're cutting processes down from things that used to take weeks to hours, leveraging a lot of those capabilities. One specific example that I'm really excited about is something our own console folks are using. We call it Echo. It's Echo Automation System. So it's using a machine learning software that can pick up on your voice. It can listen to what's happening on the net, and it can focus on an anomaly discussion, and it can dictate what the computer's hearing on the net so that the operator can see the specific issue that's being worked. And then as they're transmitting over the net and talking through the ways to solve a technical problem, it's documenting all that. They can go back later and look at that process and learn about how to get more efficient with those discussions on the net as they're working a technical issue. It's also a great training tool for others as they prepare for on-console operations, and it allows them to pick up on all the traffic and not miss anything while they're doing it. So that's just one of those ways where the human-machine interface is now interacting better to make us more efficient and faster.
Colonel, final thought. You talked earlier about the shift in the way that you acquire capacity and capability, how it's moving to more of a service environment. How is the acquisition reform effort that the Pentagon is undertaking and the commercial space strategy the Space Force has released, how does all of that work together with the encouragement basically coming from the Pentagon to do it the way you've already been doing it? I imagine that's just been a boost for your method of operations from an acquisition perspective.
Yeah, and that's why you see that one of the first program acquisition executives that was announced was the Space Access PAE, because we've largely been operating in this construct for several years now, almost 5. And we've been applying a lot of the lessons that folks are talking about to increase industrial base capacity and to get faster and more innovative and efficient with our acquisition strategies in the launch business for a long time. We were leveraging other transaction authorities literally 26 years ago. The very first contract that we released for launch to enable where we are today, the Evolved Expendable Launch Vehicle contract, was an OTA, and it was a 50% cost share between the federal government, the Air Force, and Boeing and Lockheed to build the first Evolved Expendable Launch Vehicles, the Atlas and the Delta IV. And then we've since iterated on that approach. So the launch vehicles you see coming online with Vulcan, with the New Glenn, and with the Falcon series, that they bear the fruits of that same investment schema. of the past as we continue to invest in the industrial base, give them the capacity demand long term so they can plan the entire supply chain and the production capacity that they need to meet that demand, and then leverage that for commercial services going forward to drive down the cost of launch and to continue to get American innovation on orbit for national security and economic benefit for our nation.
Colonel, it's great to learn about what you're doing out there, and congratulations on the success that you had last year, and I look forward to catching up with you in the future and talking more about the work that you're doing. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks again, Francis. It's been a pleasure.
You can read more on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. A new energy development program at DARPA is drawing interest from the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. DARPA calls it the Fleetwood Program. You'll learn about it on this week's FedGov Today TV. The new show debuts 10 o'clock Sunday morning on ABC 7 in Washington and on YouTube. It's on a number of times all weekend long on the American Forces Network. If you miss the debut, you can watch on demand on the FedGov Today YouTube channel and on fedgovtoday.com. The next FedGov Today podcast is coming next Tuesday. I'm Francis Rose. I'll talk to you then. Thanks for listening.